In the heart of Obele village lived a couple, Ifeoma and Chike, a couple known for their deep love and strong bond. They had been married for nearly 10 years, a time filled with love and harmony. But they had one unfulfilled dream, a child. The years passed, and despite their happiness, the absence of a child brought them deep sorrow, especially for Ifeoma, who longed to hear the sound of a baby's laughter in their home. Ifeoma and her husband had been to different hospitals and seen different doctors, both in their village and outside their village, due to their childlessness. But the doctors kept assuring them that all was well with them. As time passed, the villagers began gossiping. The villagers started speaking in harsh tones whenever Ifeoma passed by. Some pitying her, while others softly suggesting that her barrenness was the cause. Some even claimed that the ancestors of the land had cursed the couple, while others believed Ifeoma was caused by a jealous spirit. However, Chike remained strong and loving, constantly assuring his wife that their time would come. But Ifeoma's heart grew heavier with each day passing by, and she knew she couldn't wait any longer. One afternoon, while Ifeoma had gone to the market square to buy food ingredients, she wanted to use it to cook before her sweet husband returned from the farm. She heard some market women gossiping amongst themselves. Poor woman, I really feel pity for her, one of the women said in sympathy. What could be the reason for her barrenness after 10 solid years? Do you really think she's cursed? Another contributed. But I heard the great Ijele River had the power to give life to the dead and even bless with a child. But its consequences are always heavier than its gifts, the last woman said. Immediately Ifeoma heard this, her eyes lit up, but she kept quiet. She got her goods and left the market, headed back home. As she got home, she couldn't stop thinking about the great Ijele River. She was desperate and didn't care what the cost or consequences would be. During dinner, her husband Chike noticed she was absent-minded. Ifeoma, is everything alright? Did something happen while I was gone? You look worried, Chike asked with concern in his voice. No, my husband, nothing happened. I am just thinking about when I too shall be called a mother, Ifeoma replied in a sad tone. You have started again. I have told you countlessly that when it is right, the ancestors will give us a child. After all, the doctors already assured us that nothing is wrong with us. I know the doctor said that, but it's been 10 years, Obim. 10 good years. I am beginning to think something might be wrong with us spiritually, Obim. Hey, don't bring that spiritual talk over here. I have told you, I don't believe in all these things. Just put your mind at rest. Everything will be fine, Chike assured his wife. After dinner, they proceeded to sleep. Days passed and Ifeoma's desperation grew unbearable. Without telling her husband, she decided to visit the river known for its mysterious powers, feared by all but rumored to grant children and even life to those who did. One night, when Chike was fast asleep, Ifeoma sneaked to the mysterious river, holding a lantern. The river was hidden deep in the forest, far from her village. Her heart raced as she got closer. The air was quiet, and the trees seemed to bend in, whispering warnings. The water was dark, but shining enough to draw her in. She knelt down by the riverbank, her voice shaking as she made her plea. "Oh, great spirit of the Ijele River, I have heard of your wonders, and I have come to beg you," she whispered. "Grant me a child. I will give anything. Just let me become a mother." Immediately she said this, the water began to move, and the soft shining lights came up from the river. A beautiful spirit appeared, a tall, dazzling figure with glowing eyes, and hair that flowed like water. "You seek a child?" the spirit said in a voice that echoed like the wind. "But I must warn you first. All gifts from the Ijele River cost something. Are you willing to pay the price?" The spirit Ifeoma agreed, without fully understanding the consequences. The river spirit handed her a small black stone. "Swallow this, and you will bear a child 9 months from now," the spirit said. Ifeoma swallowed it without hesitation, feeling a cold rush through her body. A month later, Ifeoma started feeling feverish and throwing up at the smell of certain food. Herself and her husband went to the hospital, and it was medically confirmed that she was indeed pregnant. Ifeoma and her husband were very delighted, most especially Ifeoma, as she had never been pregnant for even a day before in her entire life. The thought of her being called a mother in a few months brought so much joy to her heart. As time went by, she began buying baby essentials, preparing for the coming of her child. 9 months after her secret visit to the mysterious river, Ifeoma went into labor under the dark canopy of night. With only the midwife by her side, the birth was swift, almost unnatural, as though something beyond the human realm was aiding the process. As the midwife delivered the baby, she gasped, a sound that sent a shiver through the dimly lit room. When she handed the newborn to Ifeoma, both women were struck by the sight of the child. The baby girl was breathtakingly beautiful, but there was an undeniable strangeness about her. Her skin was pure white, almost transparent and covered in fish scales, and her body temperature was also abnormal, as it was colder than the average temperature of an infant. Ifeoma named the baby girl Ifeoma, meaning good thing. But beneath her love for the child, Ifeoma felt an undercurrent of unease. She couldn't shake the memory of the river spirit warning. All gifts come with a price. She chose to ignore the fear for the time being, focusing instead on the joy of motherhood. As word of Ifeoma's birth spread, the villagers came to see the child, whispering as they gathered around Ifeoma's hut. They admired the baby's beauty, but were unsettled by the unnatural gleam of her skin. Elders muttered about the baby being gifted from the Ijele River, as the great Ijele spirit would always mark her things. Chike, who adored his daughter, dismissed these rumors, telling the villagers that Ifeoma was simply special, a blessing after years of waiting. But later, even him seemed to grow uneasy when he caught his daughter staring at him with unblinking eyes. As the years passed, the peculiarities in Ifeoma only grew. By the time she could walk and talk, her strangeness became harder to hide. Bears would land on her shoulder without fear, even in the dead of night. She never cried, not even as a newborn. Shadows stalked to Ifeoma, even in broad daylight. At first, it was barely noticeable. But soon, the shadows became more defined, following her like a second presence, as if they had a life of their own. The villagers grew fearful, whispering that Ifeoma was cursed. And very soon, they began avoiding her altogether. Their once celebratory visits, now replaced with wary glances and hurried steps away from Ifeoma's home. By the time Ifeoma turned 10, her strangeness had deepened into something that could no longer be ignored. Ifeoma, who had once thought that Ifeoma's peculiar gift would fade as she grew, but instead they had blossomed into an unsettling awareness of the world around her. All the other mothers warned their children not to go close to Ifeoma, and not talk less of playing with her. But Ifeoma cared less, as she enjoyed her own company more, playing alone. One afternoon, while Ifeoma was seated under the palm tree making cassava, Ifeoma was playing just at the front of the hut too, when she began talking to things her mother couldn't see. Ifeoma called her daughter. "Yes, Mama," Ifeoma responded. "Who are you talking to?" Ifeoma asked inquisitively. "Don't you see them, Mama?" Ifeoma responded. Ifeoma shook her head, a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. "See what, my child?" she replied, forcing a smile, but the worry in her heart and voice was clear. Ifeoma continued to see things that evaded the gaze of even the sharpest villagers. To Ifeoma, the dark areas of the home were filled with moving shadows. They seemed to be watching and waiting, with eyes that shone like tiny stars in the dark. "Mama, there are eyes in the trees," Ifeoma exclaimed, during supper with her parents. Her gaze drifting to the window as she pointed outside. Ifeoma looked, but all she saw were the swaying branches, the rustling leaves, and the pale moonlight filtering through. "It's just the night playing tricks on you, Ifeoma," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. betraying her fear. Ifeoma had begun to fear the very thing she had wished for: a child, a life, a blessing from the river. One night, while it was raining heavily, and as a storm rolled in and lightning struck in the sky, Ifeoma quietly climbed out of bed beside her parents, as if compelled by an invisible force. She wandered outside into the tempest, her feet bare against the wet earth, the rain soaking her clothes. The next morning, her parents woke up and Ifeoma was nowhere to be found. Panic-stricken, Ifeoma and Chike searched the whole village, but it was as if Ifeoma had disappeared into the thin air. Ifeoma recalled the river spirit's word, and she rushed to the river. Getting to the river, she found Ifeoma's body lying lifelessly at the bank of the river. Ifeoma ran with full speed to her child, throwing her slippers in the air. Ifeoma shook her daughter's lifeless body and screamed on top of her voice, "Ijele, please don't take my child. Please return her back to me." Ifeoma pleaded with tears flowing from her eyes. The river spirit appeared once more, her eyes furious. "The child is mine," she whispered. "Please, I beg you, O great spirit of Ijele, have pity on me." Desperate to save her daughter, Ifeoma pleaded with the river spirit to release Ifeoma. The spirit smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "You were given a gift, and now the price must be paid," she said. "No, not now, please. Not this price. I will pay the price through any other thing." After much deliberation, the spirit offered her with a choice. "You may keep your daughter, but you must offer something of equal value in return." "What can I give in return?" Ifeoma asked. But the river spirit shook her head and only said, "Time will tell," as she disappeared back into the river, resurrecting Ifeoma back. Ifeoma returned to her mother's arm, seemingly unchanged. But from that day on, something inside Ifeoma began to weaken. Slowly, she realized that the spirit had taken her life energy to spare Ifeoma's. Every day, Ifeoma grew weaker, her vitality fading as that of her daughter thrived. As Ifeoma grew older, her powers became harder to control. One day, during a village festival, the sky suddenly darkened and the ground trembled. Shadows burst forth from the earth, cycling Ifeoma as she stood in the middle of the crowd. The villagers screamed in terror, fleeing as the shadows grew larger, twisting into monstrous shapes. The chaos continued to grow until the river spirit appeared once more, this time in the heart of the village. "It is time," she said, her voice echoing through the dry, muddy streets. "The child belongs to the river, and now she must return." Ifeoma, realizing the power she could not control, stepped forward, ready to accept her fate. But Ifeoma, despite her weakness, stood in front of her daughter, refusing to let her go. In a final act of love, Ifeoma offered her life in place of Ifeoma. The river spirit accepted the offer, and with a single touch, Ifeoma fell to the ground, her life force completely drained. As her mother's body crumpled, Ifeoma screamed, and the shadows around her vanished, sucked back into the earth. The village was saved, but at a terrible cost. After her mother's sacrifice, Ifeoma knew she could no longer stay in the village. She had become a danger, and the villagers feared her more than ever. With a heavy heart, she left Obili, walking alone into the forest toward the mysterious river where her fate awaited. Ifeoma stood at the edge of the river once more. This time, she does not fear it. As she stepped into the water, the river spirit greeted her with open arms. Ifeoma disappeared beneath the surface, becoming one with the river that had given her life. The water waves made a loud noise, then became still, leaving only silence behind. The villagers never speak of the mysterious Ijele River again, nor of the child who had come from it. But some say that on quiet nights, you can hear the faint sound of laughter near the water's edge. The laughter of a child who once belonged to both the world of humans and the world of shadows. The end.